Hey everybody, and welcome to our early comics review video. I'm Andy.
I'm Matt.
And we're here with Infinity Flux Comics out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And this is our bigger show where we go over a bunch of the big books we think you care about when you go into your local comic book store and you're looking for what comes out this week. We want to give you a little bit of information about them so you're better prepared to know what you want to buy. And let me say, this is a big week. There's a couple of, I feel like, must-buy books coming out this week. And a lot of questions about some of those books. You see a couple here before us: Ultimate Spider-Man, the new Action Comics, Rise of the Powers of 10. Some very interesting ones this week that I think you'll definitely want to hear about.
Yeah.
So let's get started with a biggie.
Yeah, this is the big one. Ultimate Spider-Man #1. I think everybody's been curious about this since it was first announced. We had the Ultimate Invasion miniseries, the Ultimate Universe one-shot, which is really just issue 5 of Ultimate Invasion.
It should have been.
And then it's like, after that, it's like, well, how is that all going to feed into an Ultimate Spider-Man book? It does it all pretty well. So here it is right here. So this is about a Spider-Man or Peter Parker, I should say.
Parker, yeah.
It's about a Peter Parker who is 35 years old. He's already married to Mary Jane. They have 2 kids, Richard and May. But yet he does not have his spider powers and we know why, because of the events from Ultimate Invasion. One thing I'll say, this isn't a spoiler, and I feel like this is something that people do want to know ahead of time, is that everything about their family relationship, the marriage, the parenting, it's all very strong. There's no tension between Peter and Mary Jane. Like, they have a really good marriage.
They go out of their way to show you.
Right.
There's a couple of conversations where you see, like, there's rock solid.
Yeah, I remember there was a few preview pages released a few months ago without the word balloons, and there was a panel where Richard, his son, kind of looked at Peter. He had this look on his face, and people were speculating, oh no, the kids are mad at dad, or vice versa. But that's not the case at all. Like, they have a great relationship with their kids. Peter and Mary Jane have a great relationship with each other. So everything about the family is good. And this book is really kind of a day in the life of Peter Parker. We see that he's working at the Daily Bugle, and we see some other familiar characters who you would expect to see at the Daily Bugle. We also see a very surprising character that you would not expect to see at the Daily Bugle, and this book is actually kind of about that character as well as Peter and what he's going through. So about halfway through the book, Peter, Mary Jane, and the kids, they go to a memorial service for those who lost their lives in the big explosion in New York that we saw at the end of that Ultimate Universe one-shot. So that kind of tells us a little bit more about that event. We see some names on a wall about who died.
The event from the perspective, because we saw it from a very, upper tier version of, we saw the heroes that were there at that time. But this is you kind of see it from the people's angle of kind of what this looked like to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a little bit after that, something happens to 2 of the characters that make them decide to go on a different path. These are 2 of the supporting characters that we saw at the Daily Bugle earlier. They decide to do something different with their lives, and it makes Peter start to think, maybe I need a change as well, because what we saw at the beginning of the book is Peter, he gets up in the morning and he's getting ready for work, but he's kind of sullen. He's a little bit somber, not really mopey, but just he feels off, and he feels like it's time for him to make a change in his life. And so because these other 2 characters are making a life change, he feels like maybe I should do that now too. And he talks about it with Mary Jane, and of course she's supportive because they have a great marriage. So like I said, most of the book is very day in the life, slice of life of Peter, what he's dealing with. He's about to make a new change in his life and that kind of thing. The last 4 pages or so is where it gets kind of comic booky, where it starts to really tie into what we saw in Ultimate Invasion, and really that Ultimate Universe one-shot more than anything. That's where it all starts to tie together. And I won't tell you what happens, but I thought it was really well done. It was a little bit, like I said, comic booky, a little bit sci-fi. Some interesting things happen at the end of the book. And it was really good. Like, I love this issue. I thought it lived up to the hype. Now, One thing I will say is this is a story that we're going to have to be patient with. Okay,
Yeah.
this isn't something like, in Amazing Fantasy 15, Peter was bitten on a hand in like page 3, and by page 7 he's in the costume or whatever.
Yeah.
So Jonathan Hickman.
Long game.
Yeah, he's playing the long game. He likes to tell big, grandiose stories. We saw him do it over the course of a couple years with Avengers. We saw him do it over a couple years with X-Men, and this could be that for Spider-Man. So this will require some patience, but I think it's going to be worth it. And just the way they established the world in this, I thought was interesting in itself.
Yeah.
The supporting characters and especially that mystery character, like that really turns everything on its ear and really made me interested in what's going on. So
I feel like there's enough of this is a different universe. It's familiar enough, but there's enough different where you go because of, the timeline where he didn't, it's been 30 years when he was supposed to have become Spider-Man 20 years ago or
yeah,
whatever, that you can see, oh, I see now how this is. I know these characters, but I can see where things kind of went different
yeah, or they
directions.
diverge because of one thing or another.
And there's a thing, and it's not a spoiler to say, but I like that there's a feeling in this Peter Parker of like, I was meant for greater
Right.
things. And I feel like that's going to be a running theme
Yeah,
of like, I was meant
absolutely.
to do more than this kind of, just work a regular job and stuff. Like, I've got a calling.
Yeah. So I think if I were willing to guess, I think probably a lot of what people want to see will come in issue 2.
Yeah.
But I think you had to have this in order to get there. So just be patient. It's a really interesting story, this new world that they've set up, and the differences between 6160 and 616 are super interesting. So I loved it. I was a little bit worried because I had such high hopes for this book, and I was worried it wasn't maybe going to live up to my crazy expectations I'd set. I think it does.
Hmm.
I think this is a wonderful book. I cannot wait for more. Like I said, issue 2 is really where it's really going to be put to the test, I think.
Yeah. The one thing I did want to say, and I kind of told you this before, it's like what I had to rethink in my head. If you're a longtime comic reader, maybe you read the original Ultimate Spider-Man. Uh, Ultimate is an interesting term for this because this is not the same thing as the previous Ultimate
Definitely not. Yeah,
Universe. The
definitely not.
way they're approaching this, the way they're restructuring it, it's not like they're doing the Ultimate Universe again. It's
Right.
not like, oh, it's all starting from square one and stuff. This is, if you called it something other than Ultimate, but said, this is a new, different version of the future, it would feel like that because
Yeah.
it's not like we're not. I don't think we're gonna follow the same beats as Ultimate Spider-Man followed the same beats of 616
Yeah, I
Spider-Man.
mean, the original Ultimate Spider-Man was just Spider-Man, but for a modern audience.
Yeah.
But yeah, he get bit by the spider. He's in high school. I gotta not let Mary Jane or Aunt May find out.
Yeah,
That kind
we
of
had
thing.
the Green Goblin story, then we
Yeah,
had the Venom story, the Doc Ock story, the Carnage story, and we're like, oh, I see how this is like the one before.
yeah,
I feel like this is like you don't expect those sagas, those arcs to
yeah,
come in the packages that you
yeah,
think they
yeah.
will.
This is definitely much different than the original Spider-Man, the original Ultimate
Yeah.
Spider-Man. But I think that's. I mean, how many
We don't
times can
need
we
that
see that? Yeah, we
again.
we, we
Yeah.
had 616 Spider-Man. We went through that with him. We went through the same kind of stuff with Ultimate Spider-Man in 1610. We don't need that for a third time. But this is interesting and welcoming, and it's a welcome. All the differences are a very welcome one. So I loved it. I love this to pieces, and I can't
And
wait for
it
the next
does
one.
feel different than your Edge of the Spider Verse, where like let's make
Yes,
another Spider-Man.
yes,
Because this one I feel like has more, I don't know, roots.
yeah,
It's we're not just making another Spider-Man.
right.
We're
Fleshing him out.
fleshing him out. We're
Yeah,
setting him up. We're making you care about him and the characters around him and
yeah.
all of that.
Yeah. So that is it. Ultimate Spider-Man #1. Like I said, I recommend it wholeheartedly. And if I will say too, if you're a little jaded on 616 Spider-Man right now and how he's kind of always getting beat down, he's not with Mary Jane, and things just aren't going his way. This might be a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
I think you might like this. I think there's going to be some stuff to like in this. So we will see how it all plays out as we get into more of the series. But if you're a Spider-Man fan of any sort, I recommend this 1,000,000%. I loved it. So there's our A cover right there by Marco Cicchetto, written by Jonathan Hickman, interior art by Marco Cicchetto,
Yeah,
It looks
can't say
great.
enough about
Yeah,
how good the book
it looks
looks.
awesome. So a cover right there. We've got a bunch of variants. So this is from Manhanini. Manhanini. So there's one of them. This very nice J. Scott Campbell variant.
I feel like all these covers also are like, hey, look, Mary Jane and Peter are together,
Yeah.
and it's great.
Yep. We got a Nick Klein variant. Here's another very nice one. This is from Torque. Peter and Mary Jane look, they're together and they're happy, and they are together and happy in the book. So very happy to say that. A very nice family portrait from Ryan Stegman. Can't get any better than a Ryan Stegman Spider-Man. And then these are the ones that I like. So this is the one that I pre-ordered right here. So this is the Marco Cicchetto black suit variant.
And we have some theories about these covers. We won't get into it probably for a couple of issues.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
There's the, what we'll call the Ben Reilly suit.
Scarlet Spider, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Spider-Man 2099 suit. And then we have a 1 in 10 Cicchetto design variant that we're selling for $10. And then there was a 1 in 25 Tony Daniel variant that we're selling for $19. I loved it. Like, I was looking forward to this for so long, and it lived up to the hype. 2 thumbs
And
up.
also, we were talking a lot about, like, oh, it's a day in the life and everything like that. There is action in this. There is specifically a scene that I feel like is there to set up something we're going to see in the future.
Oh, right, yeah.
Okay, next up, we have another big book that's kind of a new starting point. So this is Action Comics 1061. And this is our new Superman Superstars. So this is the new, I guess you call it a format.
Well, I think of it as like an initiative.
An initiative, yeah.
Because the house ads in like last month's book said top characters, top creators, big action, or all action, or something like that. And this lives up to that.
Yeah. So if you don't know the format of this, starting here, at least for a while, as far as we know, is going to be 3-issue story arcs by different creative teams telling, the best Superman stories, like you said, by the biggest creators. So we kick this off with a big creative team of Jason Aaron, his pedigree is huge. I'm a big fan of his run on Wolverine, that he did for a long time, from Weapon X to Wolverine and the X-Men. But stuff with Vertigo, a great writer.
He's also doing Batman Off-World right now too. Yeah.
And then we have John Timms on art, which my big thing with John Timms was Harley Quinn with Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor on it. But also Superman, Son of Kal-El,
the first few issues.
Yeah. So fantastic creative team. It kind of goes without saying. They really did bring in some superstars for this. And this first story is a Bizarro story. Now, I feel like this is interesting. I've read a lot of Bizarro stories. Jeff Johns has a great Bizarro World story. He pops up every so often. There was the Superman kind of around the era of like Emperor Joker type thing that
like that early 2000s.
Yeah, some I can imagine. I can think of a lot of like McGinnis covers with Bizarro and everything. So I've read a lot of them, and I feel like for the most part they kind of follow a certain formula, because Bizarro isn't necessarily a villain, and that kind of goes into this as well. He's just backwards,
right?
But in this, so we actually find, and I don't want to give away too much of this, but Bizarro, it begins with Bizarro winding up in a magical place.
It's a planet full of sorcerers.
Yeah. I forgot like how they kind of described it, but it's kind of one of the things like, it's been there a long time. It's just not widely known. And logically not a spoiler to say, if Superman is highly vulnerable to magic, then Bizarro is the opposite. Now, what happens there is kind of the instigator for this whole story. But I think there's also another interesting motivation for Bizarro, because he cares about his family as much as Superman cares about Lois and the kids and all that. Bizarro has however you say Lois, but with a Z.
Lois, yeah.
Lois and
Bo-
Jim
Boyzaro.
Boys Army.
Yeah. I
And
love
so
that.
that's kind of his driving factor in this. And I don't know how much I want to give away about this, but it does bring Superman and Bizarro into somewhat of a conflict.
Mhm.
Now, Superman, which is great in here, his first thing is like, what can I help you with,
Yeah.
Bizarro? Like, is something wrong? Can I help you? Is there something wrong with your family? Like, I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
Because I feel like he kind of sees him as like a stepbrother or like
Yeah.
you know, Bizarro's like a family member to Superman. Like, he wants to help him the best he can, but it might be too much for Bizarro, and they are going to how'd you go from there?
Well, Bizarro comes to Earth with a plan,
Yeah,
and he has a reason for doing what he's doing. But it's not a good thing
no.
for Earth, and Superman can't reason with Bizarro,
Yeah.
so it leads to fisticuffs. And like I said, the house ad says big action. A lot of this book is Superman and Bizarro slugging it out.
Slinging out throughout the
Yeah.
universe, like from planet to planet.
Well, so it's not a spoiler because they had some
Those were
preview
yeah.
pages. Bizarro just like swats him to Venus or
Yeah,
somewhere.
something like that. And
Yeah.
Superman wakes up, he's like, "Where am I? Oh, I recognize this planet." Type
Yeah,
thing.
so there is a lot of good action. The artwork of that action is great. Classic. Superman versus Bizarro.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Two
classic.
super people slugging it out.
Yeah.
But that's not all to it, because at the end,
Yep.
that's when you find out, oh, this is what the story's gonna be.
Yeah, it all makes sense. It all sort of comes to a head at the end, and the ending has a teeny tiny little twist not a big like story twist, but it's like you see something and you think one thing,
Mhm.
but then like 2 pages later, Superman figures it out, and we figured it out at the same time, and that was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's what, and then you see the results of Bizarro's plan, and
Yeah, it
it's
is
super
very
cool.
It's very Bizarro, like in the form of like you kind of have to think about what he's saying,
Right.
and all of that, and that's a fun part of the
Yeah.
story. So if you've been reading Action Comics, great, continue with this because it's great. If you haven't been reading Action Comics, this is a perfect place to pick it up. I mean, it's like literally you didn't have to have read any of the previous
Yeah,
Action Comics.
this is a wonderful jumping on point if you want to read some awesome Superman books, but you haven't been.
Yeah.
This is a perfect place to start.
It's kind of one of those, like, if you're looking for a Superman book, you're like, I want a lot of action in
Yep.
it. I want a lot of like Superman. There's not as much like Lois is in this, and some of the other characters are in this, but this is a like Superman doing super things.
Yep, and Bizarro doing
Yeah.
super things too. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is, I would say, I love the main Superman book, but this is definitely like kind of the action version. Like, it's Action Comics.
Yeah.
You're gonna get the action in this.
And this, did you mention this? There's no backup stories anymore.
No, so it is, all that one story, but I feel like it was still a little bit bigger.
Like page count.
Yeah, I'm not positive.
Well,
but
I think the previous Action Comics that had 2 different backup stories. I feel like the main story may not have been a full 22 pages.
Yeah,
but this is.
Yeah.
So backup stories are great if you want a little extra something out of your books, but sometimes you really just want the main story, and
Yeah.
it feels like it ends a few pages early, whatever. But the backup stories are gone. It's just this story. Good action, good art.
Yeah, they put the action in Action Comics.
Yeah, they. Yeah.
John Tim's fight scenes are incredible. They're so much fun. They're so bright and vibrant and classic and all of that. So
Yeah, we said that last year, 2023 was a great year for DC. 2023 was a great year to be a Superman fan, and so far 2024 is also a great year to be a Superman fan.
Yeah, it's so refreshing to have just like being excited about every time a Superman
Oh,
book
absolutely.
comes out. So there is our A cover by John Timms. We've also got some variant covers. So we have, I love this Jimenez cover with Superman and Lois. We've got this Bachalo variant, which is very cool.
What's he say?
It says no action, just talking, which is fun.
Yeah, it's Bizarro, so he's backwards.
Yeah. We have this. This is the Joel Jones and Jordi Belair
Ooh.
variant. Very nice. And lastly, we have this 125 Zerdy variant, which I feel like this is fun. Supergirl does not appear in this, but it's kind of like a Supergirl and Bizarro Girl
Yeah.
cover. And we are selling this for $15.
I loved it. Yeah, every time a Superman book, whether it's Superman or Action Comics, comes out, it's always one of my first ones to read
Yep.
when I get home. It was great. All right, so next up for me is a new one, Zorro, Man of the Dead. This is the new book from Sean Gordon Murphy. This is published by Massive, which is the publishing branch of Whatnot, basically. So this is this is kind of sort of your typical Zorro story, but set in modern day. So we meet a young boy named Diego. This is probably the main part of the book is current day, but it starts off maybe about 20 years in the past when Diego was a young boy. And he idolizes the old folk hero Zorro, and they talk a little bit about, was Zorro real or was he not, that kind of thing. So he idolizes Zorro, but one day they are at it's the Day of the Dead, and his father is kind of putting on a little. I want to say, like, it's not a full-fledged play, but it's like his father's dressed up as Zorro, and they're acting out a little scene, where Zorro supposedly saved the people from somebody, and Diego's eating it up. Ah, Dad, that's great, that's great. But then when that little play is over, some members of the local drug cartel come by, and they're sort of getting onto the guy who's holding the play because he's not growing enough poppy for them, and they don't like that Diego's father is dressed up as Zorro because he represents, at least, yeah, he represents not criminal stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like he's the antithesis of the drug cartel, basically. And this isn't a spoiler, this is just what the story's about. They kill Diego's father, kind of sort of very Batman-esque. And obviously, the Batman and Zorro parallels are there. So Diego grows, and Diego has a sister named Rosa. So flash forward to current day, which is about 20 years later, and Diego has um, sort of moved off to the I think they call it the Castillo, with Alejandro, who was the guy who's like a family friend, and he was the one putting on that play, and he's been up there for 20 years training and sword fighting and hand to hand fighting and things like that. Meanwhile, his sister Rosa actually works for the drug cartel, works for the guy who killed her father. We don't quite know how she fell into that. I don't know if we'll see that or not, but something happens again on another day. There's Diego witnesses another tragedy, we'll say. I don't want to spoil exactly what happens, but he decides to don a costume that is similar to Zorro's, and he takes out some of the cartel's men, and then he swears to take down the entire cartel after this other thing that he witnessed. So it's very, standard Zorro fare, but set in modern day, and I'm interested to see how that goes along. Now, one thing I'm curious about is when he puts on the costume and he's talking to another character, he's acting very much like Zorro of the past.
Yeah.
And another character says, get in the car. And he's like, you mean that horseless chariot? I don't know what that is. And I don't know if there was something that maybe made me think, oh, actually, the original Zorro's spirit channeled into him, or is he just really like method acting? I don't quite know. I think it's just that. I don't think there's any like weird spiritual supernatural stuff to it, but I'm not 100% sure. So I guess we'll maybe find out in the next issue. But I'll show you in a second. There's covers where we see him doing some modern day things. So I'm thinking maybe he's just really into the role, basically. But it was really good. I mean, Sean Gordon Murphy,
I was about to say, how's the art? Because
it's great.
That's a huge selling
it's typical
point.
Sean Gordon Murphy, great art. So this was a really fun book. We haven't had a Zorro book in a really long time, so this is really well done. So that's our A cover right there. Here's a Liber Mejo variant. So this is Zorro doing modern day things. Zorro on a motorbike. We don't see that in this issue, but maybe later. So who knows? This is a nice Calero homage variant, homage to Jim Lee's Batman and or Superman covers, where they're on the gargoyle. And then here is the A cover again, but foil. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what direction this goes, but very standard. Hey, you killed my family, I'm gonna get revenge on you, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm excited to check that one out because it was it's kind of a passion project for Sean Murphy.
Yeah.
He's always wanted to work on Zorro, so That's really cool
Yeah,
that
he
he
did.
finally got to do his own
Yeah,
version of it.
and it's good too. Like he did a good job.
Yeah, before we go any further, just a reminder to head over to infinityflux.net where you can buy these comics we're talking about right now and have them shipped directly to you. Or if you're local, you can stop by the store and pick them up while supplies last. And let me tell you, it's stuff goes like crazy. Once we talk about them on our show, people, they hear a little bit about them and run to order them. So don't
We're
miss out on any of these because
we're just big time
we're
influencers, you know.
such big influencers, but we also influence ourselves.
Oh yeah,
Big time.
yeah.
So next up, I am going to talk about a pretty big one. This is Rise of the Powers of 10 or Rise of the Powers of X. However, this one is said, and this is our next in our flip-flopping Hoxpox style book. So we had
Fall of the House of X.
Fall of House of X, and now Rise of the Powers of 10. And these are, I like to think of them as bookends, even though, this probably won't be the final issues of the Krakoan era. It's kind of what takes the story back down. So, this is written by Kieran Gillen and R.B. Silva. And this is really interesting. So, and it did remind me back when I was reading the original, at the beginning of the Krakoan age, because this was the book that jumped 10 years in the future, 100 years in the future, 1,000 years in the future. And I was like, whoa, this is getting nuts. Mm-hmm. This is very similar to that. So this takes place 10 years in the future, but now after kind of the events of Fall of X and the Hellfire Gala that brought down Krakoa and all of that, the mutants are definitely now, pretty much decimated. There's a few left, and they're trying to basically their last attempt to retake Krakoa and retake Earth and kind of reestablish themselves. But Orcus is, stronger than ever. You've got Nimrod, you have Omega Sentinel, you have all of the baddies there. Now, I will say, this is, for me, while I was reading this, a pretty hectic issue. I don't want to say confusing. I could follow it for the most part, but the elements in it were pretty, like, high concept. This does feel a lot like early Hickman setting up this storyline.
Yeah, I mean, and you said it. I mean, from what I saw of it, it felt very much like the Powers of 10 book, where that one was a lot more high concept. That one involved different timelines and time periods and that kind of thing. That's what this feels like.
Yeah. So you're dealing with a lot of that. But I will tell you, get to the end of the book. So
yeah, I think people are going to be talking about the end of the book, and speculating about
exactly. So a little bit about the issue. In this 10 years in the future, we have kind of a different lineup. You see them on the cover, but here's some names for them. So it is led by Sink, who's been a big part of the whole Krakoan era, but he's now the Professor. But he's in the wheelchair because his powers are he can basically like recall powers of other mutants. He's done it so much that it has basically crippled him.
Oh, okay.
Which the X-Men are prepared for that.
They established that a little while back, right? That the more he uses powers, like recalls powers,
it kind of drains him or really takes a toll on him. We also have Iron Man, as you can see on the cover, but this one is an AI of Tony Stark that has been long dead. So it's a very interesting version of Iron Man, but just kind of sounds like Tony Stark. We have Kamala Khan as the last Captain Krakoa. I thought that was interesting. Kind of implies there was multiples along the way.
Yeah.
We have kind of some big ones. Shadow Tiger, who is Kate Pryde, but she has consumed the Death Seed. Now, you may know what that is. I'm not quite sure, but it has created a kind of giant, scary version of Shadowcat, but now Shadow Tiger, whose powers now are even more extreme. I was like, how do you phase? She almost has like Nightcrawler powers now. She can make people phase at a distance.
Oh, okay.
So that's pretty cool. And you have Wolverine. And Wolverine is just Wolverine. He's just been around.
Yep.
It's basically, he's like kind of the embodiment of what the X-Men were at this point. And in this crazy issue, you've got basically return of Mr. Sinister, Nathaniel Essex. his explanation of his multiple forms and why he was using Myra. It's kind of a little bit of a recap, but you also get a lot of like, these are all of our final plans coming into being.
Mhm.
You know, I'm backstabbing this person, and the people are dying left and right. But wait till you get to the end. I don't want to give it away, but much like in the previous one, this is not necessarily the future that is going to happen.
Right.
This is a potential future, and we learn about that. I don't want to give it away, but let's say it goes from very, very complex in the main part of this book to about as simplified as an idea can get. And I thought that was
Yeah.
really interesting. And
You
I feel
literally-
that a lot of people have it's kind of become a
almost like a meme,
colloquialism
yeah.
or something.
Well, you text me the panel and you said, "Could it really be that simple?"
Yeah,
Because that's
exactly.
how simple it is.
Yeah,
Could it really be that simple?
It kind of, a plan comes down to about as simple as you think, and it's like, oh, could this have been the plan all along? Type thing. Could this have been done all along?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, and I feel like it was made not overly complicated, but was like showing you every element of what's been going on for these past few years in the Krakoan era and all the characters that have been at play, then to turn around and go, or this.
Right.
And it will have people talking. I will say it may have some people mad.
I think it will.
I think it will have some people being like, now this is one of those like it can go a lot of different ways.
But this isn't the finale. This is only the start. So just because the issue ends one way does not mean that that's what's going to happen.
Exactly.
So that's why you have to read and you have to let the story play out, because even though maybe it is that simple, that doesn't necessarily mean that is what they're going to do.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's going to play out perfectly for the characters
Right.
involved. So yeah, I was not mad. I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
how is this going to play out?
I
I
think
want to see.
I think it's a red herring.
I do
Because
too.
it's too simple. It's like, oh, surely they're not going to just like, that's, yeah.
Or there's going to be people who get in the way or whatever.
Yeah.
But all that to hopefully intrigue you enough to go check out Rise of the Powers of 10, because I thought it was really interesting. I love the Fall of the House of X book. I thought that was really cool.
Mhm.
And now I think this one's really cool. I've liked all of this Fall of X stuff
Yeah.
because it finally feels like all of the connective tissue is finally coming together, where we go, oh, I see what they were trying to say all along. And it's really rewarding to people who've been around for a while.
Yeah, I haven't even read any of the Krakoa stuff, but even I'm thinking like, wow, this Fall of X stuff it's really well done, and there's a lot of stakes and things are heavy, and how are they going to get out of it? Yeah,
all of that. So just all of that to say, definitely check this one out if you've been enjoying the X-Men books, or you're just so curious like me. Like, I haven't kept up with all of them, but now I'm like, how is this all going to play out? And I feel like that's the strong part of this issue. So that is our A cover. R.B. Silva's art in it is awesome. We also have this, of course, it's a Scotty Young cover for a #1.
Yeah.
But very cute little Jean Grey. We've got the other part of our connecting Mark Brooks cover. Love this one. And it's funny, there's a kind of one of those, I forgot what the technical term for them, where they show you all the characters that are involved in this issue at the beginning. I'll say, just don't hold on to those too tightly. We also have this Go variant with Rasputin 4. Very cool. We've got this Lozano variant. I'll say most of the characters you're seeing on these covers do appear. So I always like that. And then lastly, we have this 1 in 25 Harvey variant that we're selling for $20.
All right, so next up for me is this one, Giant Size Spider-Man. So this is a one shot. This is just a nice one and done story, and this is the first of several giant size one shots that we're going to get throughout the year.
Fantastic Four.
Yeah, the Fantastic Four is next, and it kind of just harkens back to the 70s when you had not only your annuals, but before they settled on the term annual, they had the king-sized Hulk or giant-sized Avengers or whatever, you know, and it just harkens back to those days. Just fun one and done stories. You can literally just pick this up and just read it and be done with it, and it's great. Written by Cody Ziegler, art by Iban Coelho, so the story is good, the art is fantastic. Um, this and it features, as you can tell on the cover, so it's Spider-Man versus Venom, so Miles Morales versus Dylan Brock, so kind of like I think of like second generation
Yeah.
Spider-Man and Venom. But basically in this one, Spider-Man and Misty Knight are investigating this gang that is selling some of Rabble's tech. Rabble, who is the his villain from the first story arc of his current series, kind of his big villain now. She's very tech centric, and they are sort of staking out a warehouse with a gang who is selling some of her tech. Spider-Man moves in to investigate some more, but he gets spotted, so obviously he just has to start fighting the guys. But then Venom has been tracking these guys as well, and he busts in, and then from there it's just your typical Spider-Man. Well, actually, kind of in reverse though, like. They team up to fight the bad guys and stop them, but then they start fighting each other because Venom is all about going to extremes,
Yeah.
and Spider-Man's not going to let him do that. And that's it. I mean, that's really it. I mean, the whole thing takes place in just a warehouse. They fight some bad guys and they fight each other. That's really all you need, right? And then it ends. I mean, but it's still really fun. This also reprints Ultimate Comics Spider-Man number 22, which is Miles' first encounter with Venom. Obviously, that's back when it was still in the Ultimate 1610 universe, but still just another little story of Miles fighting Venom. But there's really not much more to say to it other than that. Just like I said, one and done. You could hit this.
It's a good thing.
It's a great thing. Yeah. It's just a cool story. The art, like I said, the artwork is great, and you get to see Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and Dylan Brock Venom just slugging it out. And that's all you need. So yeah, I like it. If you're a Miles Morales fan, if you've been reading the current storyline, pick this up. It's just a good story. So there's a cover right there by Brian Hitch, and we have this really cool Deadly Foes variant by Barden. It's a lot of foes.
It's a lot of foes' heads that he's going to be kicking.
Okay, next up, I have one that I made Matt read, even though he wasn't supposed to for this week, because I read it and I said, this was so good.
I'm glad you suggested I read it, because it was...
So this is Transformers number 4. No surprise here, if you've been watching our shows for any length of time, you know we are loving all the Energon Universe stuff, or pretty much all of Image's acquisitions of Transformers and G.I. Joe. Like, whatever form that takes. Real American Hero, Transformers, Duke. Next week we're getting Cobra Commander.
Mm-hmm.
And Transformers, though, continues to be... I feel like it ups its game every issue.
Yeah.
So
every issue, there's something that I've never seen before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or just Daniel Warren Johnson, of course, who's doing the writing and the art on it, has... Every issue had you turn the page and go, whoa.
Yep.
And that is such a classic for comic book creators. I don't want to say it's a lost art, but it is a art that you don't see quite as much anymore of the page turn reveal, and this is no different. So, what's also really cool, this story, I feel like from issue 1 to 4, maybe took place all within like a couple hours.
Or maybe like, I thought it was maybe a day or two.
Maybe a day.
Yeah.
I think there was a night, but like it's moving at a brisk pace. Mm-hmm. And in this one, you've got the Autobots on the ropes, because you got Starscream chasing Optimus, which is super cool. You get way more scenes of them transforming mid-transformation.
There's a bunch of that in here.
And a bunch of that, like Starscream, where his head is like flipped back into his back as like his wings are coming out. It's so cool. We've got Spike, who has been injured in the previous issues. They are trying to get him to safety. It is so much chaos, but in the best way of just like, we've got to move. You've got introduction of another new Transformer character that gets brought in, basically because they were like, we need someone else on our side if we're going to do this. But the Energon is still running out. There is a very small supply of Energon for the Autobots and the Decepticons at this point, where I feel like they're kind of running on fumes. Like the panic level of like, we have to get something, or we can't revive our friends, we
Right.
can't do all this.
We are on empty. The needle is at E.
Yeah, but what's so great in this is the Autobots and the Decepticons, how they're portrayed. The Autobots are, especially Optimus, the kind of the arbiters of good. Like,
You said Optimus is very Superman-like in this with how
he does things, and then like even when one of the other Autobots questions why he made a very big decision that could have cost them a lot,
Yeah.
he's basically like, because it was the right thing
Yeah.
to do. And it's that constant, like, you've got great this one I feel like had the most different kind of pacing. It wasn't all action. There was some genuine, like, heartfelt moments of even interactions between humans and Autobots that were really, really nice. But I'll say there's some big sacrifices made in here. Not like ones like, you know, it's not like, oh, every issue they're going to kill somebody or whatever.
Yeah, nothing like that.
It's a bigger concept of sacrifice in this one. But the I think the biggest thing we both took away from this one was, man, the Decepticons in this are brutal. They do not care. And you'll see, like Starscream do something that it's like, not even like technically like not grotesque, but like that is an evil thing he just did.
Yeah, these are definitely. I mean, the Decepticons in the '80s cartoon were bad guys, but in this comic they are evil.
Yeah, they do things that are like, wow, that is like they need to be stopped, or it's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
But the other big part of this is, I would say within the last like 3 or 4 pages, some of the classic Daniel Warren Johnson turn page moments where you turn and you're like, that is awesome. There we had the moments in previous issue where Optimus ripped his arm off and used it as a weapon. He even addresses that in the letters page. Did you see that part?
No.
Where he said it's an homage to his favorite Gundam
series
and stuff. And it's like, that's so cool. But it's like one of those moments where I'll say these aren't quite as action moments, but they are like iconic, like, oh my gosh, this just went another step further. So I don't want to give those away, and I'll be bringing that back up in just a second. But I would say there's 2 key scenes in this that I think are people are going to be talking about that are just another reason why this is one of the best books coming out. So that being said, here's some variants, and I'm actually going to do something that I don't know if I've ever done on this show. So first off, we've got this Arocena variant. Very cool. That we are selling for $8. I believe that's the 1 in 10. There is a 1 in 25 green variant.
Oh, careful. Don't.
I'm keeping it down here. 1 in 25 green variant that we are selling for $15. It's very cool. Now, this last one, I am not going to show. So I think this was like under spoiler variant. This is a 1 in 50 Milana and Leone variant that we're selling for $60. Now, this is, I feel like it's a spoiler that I don't want to give away because I want people to read it and experience it.
Like I was just sitting here in this seat, reading it right before we started recording, and I got to that one part. I was like, "Oh wow!" And then I flipped, and then got to the end. I was like, "Oh, what is that?" Where's that gonna go? The kind of thing.
So this is a super cool cover. I'm sure it's online at this point if you want to go see a picture of it. I think it's super cool and definitely worth it. But it is a 1 in 50 that we're selling for $60, and I kind of see why it's the 1 in 50. It's a spoiler variant, but I mean it's just super cool. But it essentially gives away the last page of the book, and I don't want to ruin that for people. So I'm not even giving you an option. I'm not giving you a spoiler warning. I'm just not going to show it to you because
you will thank us.
Around here, that's our thing. We want people to enjoy comics and love what they're reading. And sometimes spoilers are like, we're going to show you, but look away. But sometimes it's like, no, I don't want to be responsible for maybe taking some of the enthusiasm out of reading.
We want you guys to experience the page turns like we experienced when we read these books over the weekend. So there was a lot of those with Ultimate Spider-Man. It's like, oh, wow. Like I want people to have that same reaction. and not be like, oh, I was expecting that because I saw it on Twitter or whatever, or
Yeah,
YouTube.
I imagine if a certain thing we talked about with Ultimate Spider-Man showed up on a cover, we would have probably said, we really don't want to show
for sure.
this.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so next for me is Green Lantern #7. I continue to love this Green Lantern book. Green Lantern and Superman have got to be my two favorites from DC right now. So this one is a little bit less action-packed than last issue. You guys know when we talked about Green Lantern #6, I said it was my favorite single issue of 2023, and that's still true. It was this big epic fight book between Hal Jordan and Sinestro. So this one's a little bit calmed down, but there is still a lot of good action in it too. But this book all takes place before issue #1, so it's a little bit of a flashback and starts to give us answers to some of the things that we've been curious about in this series so far. So we learn why Sector 2814 has been quarantined and kind of sort of why Hal is back on Earth. And we also, after the surprise ending of issue #6, with a certain character, I'll start trying to spoil it, but we learn all about that. We learn how that happened, how that came about, all that. So a lot of answers in this book, but also a couple more questions and mysteries raised. So the story's not done yet. We're 7 issues in, and they're still in the middle of this big story, and it doesn't show any signs of slowing down anytime soon. So I don't know. I mean, just another great issue of Green Lantern, just carrying the story forward, answering some questions, giving us some more, and I'm on board for all of it. So there is our A cover right there. I feel like I'm not mentioning something either. Yeah, there's a new mystery plus another new development involving the character who showed up. Oh! There was another character who showed up who appeared at the end of last issue, and that there's a new development with that character and where they've been and things like that too. So, like I said, answering some questions that we had, but giving us more to chew on for the next few issues. So yeah, again, A cover right there, and then we have this really cool Doc Shaner variant, Hal Jordan and Kilowog. And then we have this really cool 1 in 25 La Fuente variant featuring the Sinister Sons.
Yeah,
and we're
get
selling
ready for that.
Yep, selling for $15.
Okay, next up for me is Star Wars issue 42. So we are out of the Dark Droids crossover event and back into your regular scheduled Star Wars comics. This issue, or this, I guess the storyline is called The Sith and the Skywalker. And if you'll remember back before Dark Droids, before all that, there was a story where Luke met this kind of kyber crystal professor expert, and he had this red kyber crystal, and he wanted to learn how to purify it. A kyber crystal turns red when someone pours kind of their force hatred and everything. It's basically called bleeding the crystal. And that's why Sith do that is they kind of pour their malice into it.
Or if they spill spaghetti sauce on it.
That is true. that can be cleaned with some pledge.
Right.
But Luke wants to learn how can I go the opposite direction and purify crystal. And we do learn it's without so many words, it's because he wants to know that he could turn Vader back. He wants to learn how do you remove the dark side from something, basically. Well, it's going back to that storyline where Luke meets back up with Greta, who was kind of the scoundrel-like character that we met during that storyline before, and he goes to her to basically be like, hey, I want to get back to figuring all of this out, but last time I did it, I kind of fell into this like force vision where I saw this like Sith Lord sitting on a throne. That's who is on the cover here. And a lot of people like was not given a name or anything, but a lot of people are like, what is this? And Luke wants to get back to that, even though he knows it's very dangerous. We meet a new character named Auntie Fees, who is, I'm guessing, Greta's aunt, who taught her all of these abilities about like purifying crystals and all of that. They're not Jedi, but they're very in tune with the Force. And with all that said, Luke is going to attempt to go back into this kind of Force vision to explore it and see if he can figure out a way to reverse these effects. And so that's only about half the book. The second half, you'll have to read to find out, but it gets pretty extreme, and I'm glad we're back to this kind of Jedi Sith uncovering mysteries about what all of that means. Really interesting stuff. And the question is, if the problem's not like, you know, can he find, I think they even mentioned, can he find his way out of this force vision? It's, will he even remember there's anywhere else to go to? It might consume him that much. So definitely check it out. If you weren't too hot on the Dark Droid storyline or whatever, check it out. Go back to Star Wars now, because we're right back on the tracks where we were before with this awesome storyline that I can't wait to see where it goes. So that was our A cover. We also have, of course, our John Tyler Christopher action figure variant with, did they say it's Padme? Oh, this is Sabe, the Handmaiden. We've got this really awesome Rebels 10th anniversary cover with the Grand Inquisitor. We have this logo variant. It's cool they've been doing these for most of the books, like all different things. But this one, they put stars on the Star Wars one, so it kind of looks like the opening scenes.
Yeah, it looks solid black to you guys, I think.
Yeah,
but yeah, there's
speckled
stars
on that one. And this one I think is going to be big. This is the 1 in 25 Baren's variant. This we are selling for $45, and here is where you see that Sith on the cover. It looks like there he's got 2 char hounds or something similar. I think this is just a character we're going to be learning a lot more about, and it's very interesting to see here because we don't know how far in the past they are. And we do learn why can Luke communicate with them even if they're like in this vision, all of that. They actually explain it pretty well how all of this works, so it doesn't feel like there's a lot of plot holey stuff there. So, yep, really good issue of Star Wars this week.
All right, so next up is Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, number 2. So one thing I didn't realize last week when I read the first issue is this is a weekly series, and every issue, excuse me, every issue is one and done. So more of that, please.
Yeah.
You get a brand new one and done story every single week. And if that sounds like something's cool to you, grab the first issue because it just came out last week. Grab this, and then we'll have 3 more over the course of the next 3 weeks. So this particular issue features Spider-Man 2099 battling Dracula, and not like Dracula 29, just regular Dracula because he's immortal, right? Moon Knight 2099 is involved just a tiny little bit. She sent a distress signal from her base on the moon to Spider-Man. So he puts on this the whole issue. He's got like this cool spacesuit on. It's not a whole lot different from his regular suit, but it is a little bit different. You know, it's like it can withstand the vastness of space. I
always love when they have their specialty suits.
Yeah. So Spider-Man transports up to her base on the moon, and then he's surprised by Dracula. And then from there, I feel like I had a lot of those books this week. Like, it's just a fight between Spider-Man and Dracula. And that's pretty, yeah.
That's why you just need a fun book that you're just kind of just beat by beat. You're not having to like dissect it. You're just enjoying it.
Yeah. So Spider-Man, when he gets up there, he finds that Moon Knight has been defeated at the hands of Dracula, who wants to get back to Earth, and that's the reason. That's the reason he was called up there in the first place, because Dracula basically doesn't know how to get to Earth, so he needs somebody to come up there, and then like he can manipulate them or beat them up or whatever, and then go back to Earth. But like I said, most of it is just a big fight between the two of them. But we do learn some cool things about the vampires on Earth. I don't know. I don't want to spoil all that stuff, but yeah, it was just really cool. A one and done weekly series. The next one I think is
it Werewolf?
I think so. So it's weird.
We're getting Werewolf and we're getting Man-Thing and a few other
cool so it's
characters.
Weekly series, one and done, and it's everyone is Spider-Man versus like
a horror
themed villain. Like, what is that? That's awesome. So yeah, just if you're like Spider-Man 2099, pick this up. So that's our A cover right there. And then we have this the Sun Nguyen variant. And then we have this 1 in 10 Dowling design variant that we're selling for $10. Just Dracula. You know, he doesn't have fancy $20.99 upgrades. It's just Dracula. So that's what I thought was cool. It's like, oh, it's regular Dracula versus future Spider-Man. That's neat.
Yeah, that is super cool. Okay, next up, I've got Wolverine number 41. And what makes this one so special? This is the beginning of Sabretooth War Part 1. And they've been teasing this for a long time. So this is supposed to be. I mean, we haven't seen them face off in quite a while. Wolverine
for
and
a long
Sabretooth.
time. Yeah.
And we know that Sabretooth had his own miniseries where we saw like he was the first like felon of Krakoa.
Right, yeah.
He got like sucked under the island and he was in prison there. We had the miniseries that saw like what happened while he was under there and everything. Now Sabretooth is out and he is coming for revenge. It's very interesting because not only is it Sabretooth, it's Sabretooth with some multiversal Sabretooths with him. Now, I haven't been keeping up with everything, so it kind of came as a surprise, his kind of like legion of Sabretooths. But that just means that there's more for Wolverine to take on.
What was it, the Council of Reeds in Hickman's Fantastic, I guess the Council of Sabretooths?
Yeah, so you get like a savage Sabretooth, which is like
He's already a savage,
female, almost like Craven the Hunter Sabretooth. It's the feeling I got. We've got one that's just called like Pretty Boy Sabretooth, which he's like, it says he's like Beauty and the Beast all in one. We've got Captain America Sabretooth. But what's funny is Sabretooth's been gone for a while. He doesn't know a lot about the Fall of X stuff or what happened to the Hellfire Gala. So even though Krakoa's being guarded by Iron Man Sentinels and all of that, he arises like, where is everybody?
Yeah.
I came here for some revenge. But it doesn't take too long for him to figure out something big's gone down. Meanwhile, Wolverine is with some of his team of mutants that are holed up in the North Pole in the I forgot what their like structure is, but it's basically like I think it's called the greenhouse. It's like a safe house that they have until they can basically figure out what to do with the Fall of X and all of that. But of course, Sabretooth's gonna sniff them out. And that's kind of what sets up this big thing. So there is, I would say, a pretty major death in this one of a character that's like pretty well known. I don't know like how it's gonna stick or whatever, but I mean it's pretty rough.
It's Wolverine. We're just going to tell you, and the book is canceled.
Unfortunately, fortunately, it's
fortunately, it's not. Yeah.
But some pretty big stuff happens in here, so I do feel like it does rely a little bit. I mean, I haven't been following this super closely, so I was like, oh, okay, that's who Wolverine's with right now, or that's where Wolverine's been. Oh, I don't quite understand Sabretooth right now and all the things around him, but it didn't take too long for me to just fall right into the story and not really question it. So, fun issue. It's kind of touted as being the most violent Wolverine comic ever. I'll say this one, probably not yet, but it could be coming. Yeah. So that is Wolverine number 41, which is Sabretooth War Part 1. If you even think you'll be interested in this, definitely pick it up because, once 2s and 3s come out, if by then you're like, oh, okay, I wish I got it, the first part might be gone. So pick it up while you can. We've got some cool variant covers. We've got this Greg Capullo variant, which just recently announced he's going to be your artist on Wolverine sometime in the future.
A new Wolverine series.
Wolverine series.
Well, technically it wasn't announced. He showed a page he was working on, but you could see up in the corner it said Wolverine.
Yeah.
He deleted it later because I guess he wasn't supposed to say that.
Well, there's a reason why he's drawing Wolverine on these covers, I assume. We also have this Mark Bagley cover with Sabretooth.
Bagley's been drawing a lot of Sabretooth lately. He drew Sabretooth on the cover of Daredevil Black Armor a couple weeks back.
Yeah, classic Sabretooth also.
Yeah.
And then we have this Clayton Crane variant, which I think is the Wolverine homage cover, which is, I believe this
Carnage.
is
Carnage USA.
Yeah. With the flag draped over him.
The Canadian flag.
The Canadian from Wolverine. And then lastly, we have a 1 in 25 LaRocca variant that we're selling for $20.
All right, so next for me is Thunderbolts number 2. So in last issue, we know that Bucky and Sharon Carter, Red Guardian, and Val, they took out the Red Skull. But now their next mission is to deal with his fortune, which is in the possession of the Kingpin. For this particular mission, Bucky enlists the help of Black Widow and White Widow to infiltrate a party at the Hellfire Club, to get at the money, since Kingpin is the White King of the Hellfire Club. But all I'll say is things don't go as planned. Otherwise the book would be like 5 pages
Yeah.
long. So they hatch this big plan, doesn't go as smoothly as they had anticipated, but they're methodically working through different things. So took down Red Skull, now they got to get his fortune, and then we get a little hint as to what they're going to focus on next issue. So just these cool little Black Ops stories of Bucky selecting different members, different heroes, or maybe like Black Ops style heroes, to go on these little secret missions. So it was really good. That's our A cover right there. And then we have a couple cool variants. This is Casanova's. I think it's a connecting cover too.
Oh yeah.
And then here is a Paco Medina, Bucky and Black Widow. If you were enjoying Black Widow in her Widow symbiote, she does use it in this.
Cool. Okay, next up, I've got a new #1. This is Cruella DeVille #1. We were doing another Disney villains book from Dynamite, this time focusing on Cruella DeVille. This one's really fun. It's a super easy read. It's written by Sweeney Boo. The art is by Mariana Puglia, and it is Cruella after the events of 101 Dalmatians. She's not been convicted of like puppy theft or whatever, but the public really does not like her. But she is trying to do her best to regain their confidence. She's donating money to an animal shelter. She's giving puppies away to homeless people, and she's just like doing all the like good PR things. But a lot of this book is actually narrated by a kind of a local dog who is like, but all the dogs know what really happened.
Yeah.
And so they are going to do whatever they can to reveal the truth about Cruella's real intentions and make sure she does not get back to the fame she once had. So really fun, good art, great cartoony feel. Still it does. I was always worried that it would become like modern, like she's like
right.
on an iPhone
Yeah.
or something. It's nothing like that. Like it feels like it could have happened right after the previous
Nice.
101 Dalmatians. So I just thought it was really fun, really sweet, good for all ages. Just great kind of Disney magic. We've got some variants for it as well. We've got of course, it's Dynamite, so there's quite a bit. We've got this Joshua Middleton variant. We've got a blank sketch cover, or you put a couple of dots on it and have a Dalmatian. Close-up of a Dalmatian. We've got the action figure variant.
Nice.
With interchangeable heads and a purse. We've got a 1 in 15 Middleton variant. It's a Virgin variant we're selling for $10. And we have a 1 in 10 action figure variant that we are selling for $8. It's kind of a Virgin action figure variant.
All right, and next I've got the Sentry #2, just continuing this mini-series. So Misty Knight and Jessica Jones, they are continuing their investigation into why random people are all of a sudden exhibiting some of the Sentry's powers. And I will say they do finally find a connection between these people. We still don't know why, but they do finally. There's one commonality between all these people that they finally discover. So I guess we'll have to see how that plays out.
They all have a Sentry costume.
Right, right. Meanwhile, we meet 2 more characters who got Sentry powers. One is named Marv Chow. He's a street magician. And there's another woman named Rosalinda. I think she works just at a retail store because she uses her powers to stop some shoplifters, which is pretty fun. But one of the characters from last issue, Ryan Topper, and I believe that's supposed to be him right there, he's one of the ones that got Sentry powers. But he does not want to share them. And he shows up where Marv is, and then later Rosalinda is, and appears to take their powers. Like he wants to take them all for himself, basically. and there's a really cool little bit at the end. So just more of the Sentry. If you read the first issue, don't miss the second issue because the mystery is getting deeper, and we'll have to see what happens with that connection that they found. And I don't have any variants for this too. I don't know if maybe we got one and put them in pull boxes already, but that is the only cover I have for right now to show you.
Very cool. Next up, I've got our continuation of Titans Beast World. This is Beast World number 4. And this is a really cool issue. This one, I feel like kind of comes from a different angle than the previous issues.
Not as much beast action. Like there is a little bit of I want to say there is a little bit of bestiality. Not like that. But I mean, there is some action with another character who has been transformed into a beast. But there's more like Amanda Waller stuff.
Yeah, it's more of like the behind the scenes of what's going on. So we do get a really cool part with Peacemaker.
Yep.
We're starting to see some of that side of the story come into play because, like I said, it feels like we're seeing it from a different angle. We see the heroes. We see a very big problem they're dealing with during Beast World. This is kind of right in the middle of like everything's going crazy. So it's all hands on deck trying to stop all of the beast stuff. But behind the scenes, you've got Amanda Waller, and a new group kind of rises up called the Bureau of Sovereignty, which I feel like is the one that she kind of wanted to.
Yeah, that's what she was going after. I think last issue or maybe the one before.
That I feel like are going to play a bigger part after this. It feels like they're setting up a long game. Story.
Yeah, and it seems to be run by Sergeant Steele from the current Wonder Woman run too. So there's a connection there, which is really cool.
Yeah, all the threads of Amanda Waller are really interesting getting pulled together. But you do see some really cool stuff with Nightwing, Swamp Thing, and John Kent teaming up to stop something. I love seeing the Swamp Thing like taking orders of like, hey, those buildings are falling. Can you reinforce them? He's like, I've got that.
He's like, I got it.
Wrap around the building. That's all really cool. John Kent shows off his lightning powers again, just kind of out of nowhere. It's like always really interesting to be like, yeah, but still, what are those?
Yeah, he goes Super Saiyan.
Yeah,
basically is what he's doing.
But we'll say there's a possible major death at the end of it.
Maybe
that we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
But definitely something very big happens that is definitely going to turn the tide of the Beast World event in a pretty significant way. Also, the return of Dr. Hate.
Right.
In an interesting way. I feel like there's a lot more to him that's going to be popping up after Beast World 2. It feels like some characters that are...
We're going to find out who that is, I think, in number 6. I think we talked about that in Comics from the Future.
So we'll find out who that is, but then it's going to be like, oh, okay, what's the story behind that type thing. So overall, just a really good issue. Since we're right in the middle of it, it's a lot of, at the pinnacle of the craziness. But I really enjoyed it. So that is Titans of Beast World number 4. We've got some variants for this one. So we've got the... Baren's cover with Starfire, who is in this one quite a bit too. And we've got this awesome lenticular cover, this time with Damien. Is a transformation.
I love those lenticular covers. Yeah. They're so well done. All right, so next for me is Crave number 2. And this book should not be read by anybody who's under 18. Let me say that. Parents, do not let your kids read this book. This book is so spicy. I got heartburn just reading it. There is a lot of... I'm kind of being serious too. There's a lot of adult stuff in here. So kids, don't read this one. But, more students are using the Crave app. Crave, how can I do this? How can I do that? So much so that their inhibitions are just fading away at this point. Our main character, David, he's walking through the halls of the school, and it looks like a scene from Eyes Wide Shut. If you've seen that, there's just people on the stairs, and there's people over there doing stuff. David and Alexandra, who is sort of the girl that he's lusting after, he's the girl that he received pictures of through the app last issue. They have an encounter in the library. It's hard to talk about this because
through this enjoyable.
Two other characters named Albert and Sophia. They get stuck together in an elevator. Although there's something interesting there where Sophia asks the Crave app, "How could I break up with my boyfriend?" And it, like it does, it says, "Oh, do this, this, and this." And she said, that seemed too complicated, and I just did it the normal way, and he took it really well. So I wonder if there's something there to where, like, because that's really the first time we've heard of a character receiving instructions from the Crave app, but then not using it, not doing it. So I think there might be a little bit
kind of
something.
breaking the
Yeah, something.
spell.
But the Crave app, maybe I misinterpreted this, but it seems to be watching everyone, which I think there's everything is really spicy right now, but I think the other shoe's gonna drop maybe next issue or the issue after that, because the app does seem to be watching everybody. It does seem to. There's one point where it like sends video from like a security camera to somebody else, even though nobody told it to do that, right? So
you
maybe
can see where it goes from being like spicy to like scary and malicious
really
easily.
Yeah. So, but yeah, if you read the first issue, the second one is out, and again,
I think it's really good. I think it's a very compelling story about this. Like,
oh yeah,
what would this app mean to?
Yeah, and what is it? There's that's still the mystery, because in the first issue, David had this note from, I think, his roommate, who maybe is the one who built it, but we don't know. But the little sticky note said, "Do not use the Crave app."
Yeah.
So why? I don't know. But yeah, and I don't have any variants either, so I'm not sure if we got them and we pulled them or what. But that's our cover right there.
Okay, and real quick, I'm going to talk about Outsiders #3. But I would say this is one of the craziest books I've read in a little while. This doesn't deal with the multiverse; it deals with the metaverse, as in like very high concept, weird worlds. Basically, Batwoman and Luke Fox go through a mysterious doorway that appeared in their ship. It starts off just right off the back, like that's page 1, and they're in it. It goes really fast, but they're in this kind of like maze of twisting, as you see on the cover, of twisting stairs, kind of Escher-esque stairs. But it all seems to be kind of built like the Wayne Manor.
Okay.
There's even some like little things I didn't quite understand. Like they were getting like kind of notes from different places about like piecing together these clues. I'm not sure where the clues came from, but this is really surreal. There is multiple versions of characters in this from different kind of worlds, but not quite the like multiversal way you think of that. And there is a return of a character from death metal. That is very interesting that I, kind of just assumed we wouldn't see again. Character in their death metal form that you do.
Oh, I haven't read death metal yet.
Yeah,
so I need to
it's very interesting. But by the time I got done with it, I was like, I probably have to read this again to fully digest what that was. But when they talk about like, their job is to, I think Luke Fox even says like, we're outsiders. We've got to go outside of the normal. That is what this is. So super crazy issue of Outsiders. That's gonna be read it slow so you can figure it all out. We also have this really nice variant. This is the Gilliam March variant.
And then last for me is Avengers #9. Just wanted to point this out because this is a action-packed issue with the Avengers versus the Twilight Court. Just another issue. Now, this is not a one and done, but it is another issue of just like heroes fighting villains. I've had a bunch of those this week. The last couple of issues, it was Scarlet Witch and Vision versus the Twilight Court, while everybody else was stuck in the nightmare in a nightmare, thanks to the character Nightmare. But now they're all awake and they're all just going at each other, and they do I won't say, but they do a cool thing. Well, I don't want to spoil it,
They
but
do a big cool high five.
They do a cool thing in order to gain the upper hand. So yeah, Avengers #9 versus the Twilight Court, really cool. And then we have this really nice Lucas Wernick Scarlet Witch variant cover.
And last up for me is She-Hulk. This is She-Hulk issue number 4. Sensational She-Hulk, let's say. The actual title, Sensational She-Hulk. And in this one, it's really interesting because Jennifer Walters has had quite a week. Basically, this whole series has taken place in 1 week, and so she's exhausted after the big thing that went down with Hulk and the big fight. Once again, people are being like, we hate Hulks, and we hate She-Hulk, or whatever. But Patsy Walker comes in and is like, hey, we need a night on the town. Carol Danvers is going to be there. We're going to go to this cool place and just chill. But everything's going well there until Patsy starts acting a little weird. And there may be something going down that involves her stint in hell.
Oh,
She
yeah.
had a little while back.
That was that whole miniseries, right?
Yeah. So, really interesting story there. And She-Hulk just continues to be really, really good. So we've got our A cover, and we also have our Dan Jurgens Wolverine variant, which is your Secret Wars homage
Yeah,
with
that's
all the
awesome.
Wolverines. It's really cool. And we have this 1 in 25 Brian Hitch variant that we're selling for $25. And that is it for our early comics review video. Thank you so much for watching. It was a big week with a lot of information, but thanks for sticking with us. If you stayed till the end, give us a spider emoji. There's one of those, isn't there?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't fully. I don't really get past the smiley face.
Me too. Yeah, my emoji game is sad,
It's
but I'm an old
lacking.
man, so I don't really. Yeah, a spider or a web or something spider related.
something Ultimate Spider-Man related. We'll see it. Let us know you made it to the end of the show. And if you have any questions, we never say that, feel free to drop them in the comments. We would love to answer them. And head over to infinityflux.net where you can pre-order upcoming books and order these books right now while supplies last. And until next time.
Yep, that's it.
We'll see you.
See ya.